So, John, you've been in the
Yeah.
industry a while and you've worn many different hats. I
Yes.
want to know from your perspective what has changed the most in the industry.
What's changed? Well, we got rid of the dinosaurs. When I first came, out of college and into the industry, there were a series of, mainly at that time, and this is the way the world has grown, but at that time there was a series of gentlemen, not ladies, running corporations. And they were the names. They were the Bassett family. They were uh, my good friend, the Shufords, Alex Shuford's grandparents, and so forth. This is who we were dealing with. The folks in Lexington who developed so many companies in Lexington, North Carolina, uh, some of whom came from the real estate business into furniture. One came from, of all things, the grocery business into furniture. But these were these were the folks up on the pedestal, and all of us were little peons running around doing our jobs. uh, and so it was with great honor we always spoke to these gentlemen in the industry. And so I'm going to say that has really changed. You've gone from, we work for you, we talk to you when we deem it, versus today it's a collaborative environment. I mean, that's the biggest change I see. Collaborative, more inclusive, the recognition of women and people of color and people who have been less fortunate to be exposed to this industry has become mainstream, where it was non-existent in the 70s and 80s. I mean, women were in the business, they were doing their job, they were frankly not recognized for it. And in some cases, just in the back room, never invited to market. I mean, it's obvious that it was stupid to do, but truthfully, they didn't recognize the power that they had at their command and honor it. This has changed, and that's probably the biggest change I've seen. And the other, in a sort of a negative way, but positive in one respect, a change from the brand. And you either are a brand, a Broyhill, a Bassett, a what have you, or you don't exist. To, it's really all about your story. What story do you bring to the marketplace? And of that story, what value do you bring to the marketplace? And these days, the consumers are looking for those stories, and they're looking for the value that those stories bring to the whatever item it happens to be. And that's another aspect of this that adds value to the product that really didn't add it back then. You had big giant collections, and some of them, I was involved in one which had to do with the Hopi Indians of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and their story and so forth. And that was very well done by Lane at the time. It was called Legendary. But I see smaller stories done in incremental, one person at a time kind of thing, and they express their personal story online because we can do that now, and visually because you can do that on TikTok and every other visual aspect, and people look forward to it, right? Maybe it was even embellished during COVID. That really pumped it up to another level. And now it's being used. It's an everyday thing, isn't it? What we're doing is an everyday thing.
Yep.
And the news getting out is at hyperspeed, versus you had to go to that showroom, walk through it, see the stuff, take your 35 millimeter camera out and take a picture of it, then write on your notepad. Totally gone. So yeah. So your job has that changed or what, right?
Quite a bit. Now, what stayed the same? What are some of the themes, some of those stories that keep coming up again and again on your podcast, Design Between the Lines, or just in your experience in the industry in general?
Well, within the podcast, it's interesting. Let me speak to that first. Of all of the people I've interviewed, we've done now 44 of them since I began. And I began really as an idea of my own, and then pay for it on my own. And then we were able to get some sponsorships and build some money. But here's one thing that when I ask a designer, whatever they design, what would be the first thing they tell a student or someone who is thinking about changing their job, their career direction, to understand that they'll need to do a lot of as they grow into that career direction? And the first thing they said was observe, 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 observe. Everything you see, whether it's on a personal trip, vacation, what have you, everything, put it in here. Take pictures, sort the pictures, store the pictures. My generation and earlier, it was all about the magazines, right? I can tell you designers whose houses I went to in the years that I was buying designs from them, and stacks of Life magazines, stacks of Look magazines, Architectural Digest. You couldn't even see the top of the stack, and they were tearing magazines up and stuff. And you'd see loose photographs laid all over the place, stuck on their storyboards were pin boards. That's still the same. The observational, the making what you do part of your daily exercise in life. Don't let anything go by that you don't observe and incorporate. That's the same. That's the same. The other thing that's the same but different, and this is what I mean by this, different is how each designer's got where they got. The same is they're all different. I mean, I have people that I interviewed that started in the industry as a graphic designer and ended up in furniture design. Someone else was living in their car. I won't say who that was. Actually living in their car because they wanted to head to New York, couldn't quite afford to it. When they did get to New York, they lived in their friend's living room for a couple of months till they got a job. But that's sort of the same. You still got to get out there. You got to try your stuff. You got to put yourself on the line. If it doesn't work right away, try again. None of these folks that I've interviewed have let anything go. They've always kept pushing the boulder up the hill until they found the hilltop, and then it started to roll easier, right? We talked about the difference in communication and speed of communication today, and how that's reflected in how advertising, whatever that is done, exposure. Another thing that's different, very different, is when I started in the industry, I could take the design we were working on and the details, and I could walk out the back door of my office, and I'd be in the factory, and I could show it to the guys in the machinery room and talk to the guys who are the supervisors in the factory to say what I wanted to get done for market and then what the production was going to look like, right? Then in the 80s, when Nixon went to China and the doors opened up and so forth, and we started to go to Taiwan first and Singapore and all of that, then what you did is you got your drawings, you got your stuff, and you walked out the back door and you got on a plane and you flew 18 hours. And then maybe another plane for 5 more, and then you were there to show the pictures. That's a big change, right? Absolutely. So, and now part of this is having to do with what happened at COVID. We've gone to absolute, Zooming and visual Teams and everything else, so that you can literally, before you physically get to touch the piece, you can literally roll the camera through the item, stick the camera in the door, stick your phone in the backside of the chest of drawers, and you can physically see what's there. Long time ago, I had a designer working with me, wonderful designer, new, fresh, had a problem with the concept of size and proportionality. And we were making a design which was going to be called it was a coat rack with a little place for umbrellas, right? So they could drain. And I said, well, send it over there. And I kind of sort of watched on the side as emails were going back and forth. And I said, something just doesn't look right when I'm seeing sample shots from the sample department. And so one morning I I saw it come through, and I just on the side asked the guy that's head of the sample department at that particular factory, I said, I said, could you have Bob Shoe just stand next to that coat rack? So the next morning, my designer gets a picture in his email, and it's Bob Shoe standing in the coat rack. It was so big, it came up waist high. Each of the 4 sections for umbrellas, he fit in each one. So it's like lesson learned, right? I didn't have to say a thing. But these days now, you have that almost, you're working your work shift, right? 8 hours. Here I am on East Coast time. And then at 6 o'clock tonight, second shift begins, because the emails that you've sent over, texts, WeChats, you name it, pop up in their office when they get there, and you're going to start getting replies. If you're smart, you're going to say, I get off for dinner from 6 to 8. If you're not, you'll be working a second shift. Okay. Something totally didn't happen back in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on manufacturers shifting attitudes towards designers and on designers shifting attitudes towards retail.
I've seen more manufacturers and importer manufacturers step away from relationships or step over a designer, take over the design and not pay the designer properly. Sorry to see that happen. That's the same thing that's happened over the years. And I was a rep 100 years ago to reps, that they either divided their territory, introduced them to their new partner, or told them that Bill Smith was going to get this half of their territory at the airport, So when they met their manager. So it's, that hasn't changed in the industry. They're trying to still get something for nothing. But there are a great many more manufacturer importers that are respecting the designer and doing contracts with them where there's a give and take between the two entities than there used to be. Some of that was the younger generation coming into play. From the retail perspective, they're getting there, but they're not there yet, that the retailer is recognizing the value of the product designer in this overall collaboration of getting an idea from someone's head through the process of sampling, manufacturing, out there on a sales floor and presenting it to consumers. The fact that the designer, nothing happens until that person, he or she comes up with, or they come up with an idea, usually collaborating with the manufacturer that tells them, we have a hole in our lineup. And retailers too, because many of them buy direct now. So they're going to say, I have a hole in my floor and I need the updated 18th century. By the way, that's another trend that's happening right now. Have you seen the new traditional? Right? All right. So they've had old traditional forever and forever. Well, suddenly it's looking pretty muddy and pretty old. And if you like medium brown, go ahead. But going forward, there needs to be a fresh attitude to that. That's been pushed by the younger generation coming into retail, back down through the manufacturers and getting to the independent designers and their staff designers working on it. It shouldn't be that way. It really should be the retailers and the manufacturers collaborating. They're getting there. They're not there yet. They need to do more collaboration. They need to have more respect for each other's point of view, and realize that designers are not out there looking at a wall and coming up with a great design. They're actually talking to people, and they're talking to interior designers who deal with people every single day of their lives and are getting input for them saying, I want this. I want to incorporate my travels. I want to put these pieces on shelving or in case pieces. And that word is finally starting to resonate through to the retailers, younger generation, people who understand collaboration. Good for them. And it's sort of being pushed down the throat of the manufacturer importers because it has to be. Otherwise, if they're not listening to the retailers who sell to the consumers, nothing's going to sell for them.
A more recent change that I've been noticing is groups like High Point by Design. People like Jane Dagmy are doing a lot of work to make High Point a year-round destination. From your perspective, what you think it's going to take to make it happen?
First of all, Jane is awesome. Okay. Enough said there. Anyway, here's what we thought about this. We thought about, how do we get more people in our industry? When I was head of ISFD, I kept pushing. We had a group that came together at the beginning of COVID, and we started talking to each other. And guess what? The industry organizations, the associations, Courtney, we never talked to each other. Everybody was in their little silos doing the same things and never telling each other what they were doing. That stopped March of COVID. We started talking, initially we called it a sofa chat group. So we basically sit down on your sofa with your laptop, talking to each other for the first time ever. One of the themes that came out of those meetings was, we don't have enough people coming into this industry. You got tons of people coming in and they want to design one of these. They want to do something else. They want to do, ooh, cool. What we had to do is say, guess what? It's very cool to be in this business and to be able to design a home that you're happy with and you can live with the rest of your life. And that's where I said, how do you have that happen? You have it happen by starting the educational process back just out of junior high. As they get into high school, how do you get those people involved? That's where Jane and myself and local people like Cyril Jefferson's wife, who's part of the educational effort in High Point and Guilford County Schools. Cyril is one of the members of a High Point City Council. He could be very well the next mayor of High Point, by the way. And we basically are going into the high schools and talking to design classes and forcing Guilford County Schools and others to look at art and design and cabinet making as a career path. Guess what? This fall, Central High School in High Point, for the first time ever, is going to have a course in cabinet making, courses in design that they've never had before. They put out a questionnaire. Over 400 people said they're interested. They didn't think anybody would be. And suddenly, boom, we had what we thought was going to be a 20-minute meeting at one of the county high schools, and it turned out to be an hour and a half because of all the questions that were coming. I took the 4 people that I most recently interviewed for the podcast that involved local makers who are designers also. It involved Raven Jefferson, Cyril's wife. She was there. It involved a gentleman who is the leader of an organization that builds careers from local people, and that would be Dr. Burrell Henderson Hatch. He's also part of the inclusion effort for the state of North Carolina. Caleb Collins and Jeremy Camilla, who were local makers that are awesome. Duval Reynolds, he's part of the High Point Market Authority's board. He also happens to have his own business up in Virginia. And then finally, George Gizzani, George Hall. I don't know if you know George, but he takes fabrics that are off runs and stuff and makes clothing.
Very
Awesome clothing. But we had all of these people. Why did we have them together for podcasts? But is to show young people that they too can have careers related to the furniture industry. The fact that there are 10,000 or more careers, from cutting a tree down in a forest somewhere to putting a final piece on someone's home, white glove, those are all careers. And sales, interior design. I mean, so why did we get together to make High Point a center for design? Number one, we have all the talent here. We have hidden talent people know nothing about that works every day and lives in this area. So why don't we take advantage of these great and talented people by bringing other folks here to learn from them and eventually collaborate with them and come back to the industry and collaborate together and then build on that theme. That's why it's here. That's to bring people to High Point for a specific reason. And why did it take so freaking long for this to happen in our industry. Why? It's simply because we weren't talking to each other or listening. And so finally, from the beginning of COVID to now, to High Point by Design and Jane's group doing that, to Cohab and John Muldoon working that in, and you'll hear him mentioned by George Hall, to people like the Phillipses, Mark and Jason and their family. They're building in downtown, brand new showroom. They're pushing things forward with young people. I can say I've seen wonderful, great people from college who are interning with them, who now have careers in the industry and careers with them as well. So that's another part of it, is these internships, the High Point University's design program, Guilford College, GTCC, Guilford Technical Community College. And one other aspect, and this is probably greedy from the aspect of makers, manufacturers, and importers, they're getting, we can build this way from inside out, from our backyard out, with people developing careers from their educational aspect out. We can have a ready-made team of employees who can jump right into professions in this industry that frankly had no idea they existed. No idea. One company that's doing that right now down in Charlotte is Bloom, BLUM hardware company.
Okay.
They work people from the Mecklenburg County schools into development programs with them. By the time they graduate from high school, they have money put away that they could buy a car, put a down payment on a house, condo, whatever, and a job with Bloom. I mean, immediately, who does that, right? It's self-sustainment. We need to be able to sustain our industry with young blood coming into it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do it, it's going to age out, and then what's going to happen? It really will go the rest of the way offshore from
Sure.
the creative side, and we'll see nothing. So creatives are getting together, and we're forcing the issue.
Talk to me a little bit about the guests on your podcast. I want to know who you've learned the most from, and is there a guest who surprised you?
George Hall was the one that surprised me the most. He gave his exact how he built his career and how he thinks people should build his career in 4 points to me at the end of the, totally unexpected. And it was brilliant. And I'm not going to say any more because.
And we'll link to the episode.
There you go. And also the one with Caleb Collins and Jeremy Camilla. Jeremy has just cut a deal to work with Phillips Collection. And he came from the advertising promotional industry. He has got the coolest head on his shoulders to things come out of his head. First of all, great names for products, but second of all, how his pieces go together organically blew my mind. It really did. The other I'm going to tell you, Duval Reynolds. Duval is on fire. He is just fun to be with. He gets it. He gets, if we don't do this now, we're not going to have people coming in. So he brings young people in and loves having them in his business. Bryle Henderson Hatch puts the best outline of, in incorporation with Raven Jefferson, the best outline of how the industry is and should be incorporating, bringing people who have less ability to see this industry, to see themselves in this industry, the best outline of how that should be done, how it is being done, and how it needs to be done in the future. So Bryle and Raven's take on that, and I'm going to say as much as an admonishment to the industry as it is a pathway to incorporate everyone into our industry and build from the beauty of their knowledge and experience that we've never taken advantage of or seen the value of as much as we should have for the last 50 years. And I'm going to say that's also supported by Caleb Collins. Caleb has started his own business with the help of Bryle's organization that he called Thrive High Point. that he developed and eventually launched his helping the state now in that category. But Caleb took advantage of it and launched his product this past market, his first upholstery product. He has a big heart. He almost fills me up to talk about it.
Oh.
It takes a village. It's totally true. And he surrounded himself that afternoon with all the people that helped him get there and complimented every one of them individually. And that, my friend, is a true human being.
That's so cool to hear. We will definitely link to all of these. Do you have any closing thoughts? And do you have a dream guest that you would love to have on that you haven't yet?
Besides you?
Besides me.
Wow. That was, yeah, Oprah. Get me Oprah.
We'll get her on the line.
But I also would love to hear from all of the new designers. Any new designer that would like to tell me about their experience and how they got from point A to point B. That's what it's all about, because they're a mover and shaker. They're the people that are going to move the needle as we're going forward.
That's a great message to get out there. And I love the storytelling that you're doing and that you're helping kind of spread the gospel of why it's so awesome to work in this industry.
Gosh, you said that. That's good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm up on my podium. I've got my frock on. Absolutely. That's it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Courtney, for your time.